Hi Sushil. Thank you so much for taking out the time for this another episode of Joy of Performing podcast. I'm the host, Gaurav Sabharwal. I'm the founder, CEO of JOP, and it's our pleasure to have you here. Before we can start, we would also love you to introduce yourself to the audience so that they can understand the context you are coming in from.
Yeah, hi Gaurav, hi, and hello everyone. My name is Sushil Tayal. I have, we could call it as a veteran HR professional, been in line almost now for 40 years, worked post my qualifications in HR into manufacturing space, media space, logistic distribution, banking, IDES, and been into leadership position very early in my stage. And I'm glad to be here with you and share whatever I could share with the audience.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Sushil, let's dive right into the topic, right? So, the topic for today is what makes manager truly inspiring, and how does it go beyond just getting the job done? Now, I think a lot has been spoken about managers, leaders. What is the difference between the two? How does a manager go on to be a leader eventually? But we would love to first understand what is your definition of manager versus a leader, and what is according to you makes a good manager in the first place?
I think I have a slightly different view around there. Manager and leader are coterminous bodies of the same. One cannot exist without others. You cannot be a manager without a leader, and your leadership has no meaning if you can't manage the achievement what you selected to achieve. I think that's the biggest difference here. But predominantly in principle, when you say manage, you're managing the outcomes, you're managing what you wanted to achieve around. You always have an objective. So it has some element of operational aspect of deliveries when you are managing things around. Whereas when you are leading, here you are leading and you are letting your team do to their potential to achieve what the common objective is. So inspiration, directions, right? Those are the typical core of a leadership. Whereas monitoring, tracking, KPIs are, probably the core of KPIs, but you can't achieve this unless your people are inspired to do so. So that's where they overlap with each other. But I think this is a shade difference between manager and leader here.
No, actually that's very interesting because sometimes people look down upon being called a manager, but people really get their high when somebody calls them a leader. And I think it's important to understand that nuance because, as you rightly said, with my experience too, I don't think you can be a leader if you can't manage the team well, right? And to be a good manager, you need to have that hat of a leadership. So totally agree with you. Now let's move on to that. If somebody's becoming a first time manager versus maybe a manager or a leader who's been around for, let's say, 2 decades, right? What are those 3 or 5 big traits that one should have when they move from an individual contributor now to being a manager and managing the team, right? So how does that shift really happens, and what are those 4 or 5 good traits to have?
So I think first things every first time manager must understand and accept. It's not an easy walk. It's a completely different ball game the minute you become a manager of something. Here earlier, when you are an individual contributor, you're relying on your skill and delivering where everything is under your control. Okay, the paddle is with you. When you are for first time manager, your job is not to compete with your team member. Okay, that's the worst mistake the first time managers do because their memory is pretty fresh in their mind. I was there, I used to do like this. I mean, stop comparing like this. Your manager's job is an enabler's job. Yes, obviously there is a control element. An enabler's job first requires letting things go. I think that's the most important mental shift one has to take. Saying it's okay, my job is to inspire people, my job is to manage collectively through a competition. It's exactly equivalent to being a captain in a cricket team. Right. Well, the first time manager. I mean, you have some things in control, you don't have many things in control. person contribute, and you take the ownership and accountability of success of a failure. I think that's the first thing for a first time manager needs to do. Number two is the way the world is changing and the way the people's expectations is changing, the way the work processes are changing. I think hunger to learn is the most probably the relevant skill for a first time manager, because you are new into this area and every opportunity you're dealing with is new and the challenge is new. If you have a hunger to learn, you will succeed. If you don't, if you have a closed mindset, you will never succeed. Okay, then you will create a the typical issues with the people start comparing, because remember you are probably a month back one amongst equal, you are part of them, and all of a sudden you are elevated and you are on a higher pedestal than the people in your team. It's difficult for many of them to even accept that reality, right? That you are probably better placed than them. So how do you still build that confidence is an element. Another skill probably will be from a first time manager perspective is I think the result orientation along with the accountability. You get hassled by you have to do your job, you also have to do the team's job, and then you lose focus. So how do you ensure that you remain focused and remain focused on an outcome? Balance are various skills, I'm sure organizations do that, but I think these three attributes are to me is a foundation for a first time manager.
No, that's great. Now, a lot of this, one has to work themselves, right? They need to be self motivated to kind of A, take that transition well, and learn those attributes to be better at it. As an organization, as an HR, as a experienced HR that you have been, what should the organization or the HR do in the organization to enable the first time managers to become more efficient at their jobs? What can an organization do?
I think the most important point, and that's happened very specifically in the IT industries and in a society in India or in Asian society which is hierarchical. Being manager is packed on a higher level. Your social respect is much higher than you are an individual contributor, even if you are a top scientist. So there is a race to become a manager, and I, each person has to first do a thinking: Do I want to be a manager? The HR person should also, create a ecosystem which grooms these people to be a manager and fail without any stigma attached to them. Okay, there are new people. When you start walking, you will definitely fall. The similar things will happen with the first-time manager. So, manager's job is to ensure that they succeed in creating more managers under them. And I'm not saying build a bureaucracy around it. It's about building a talent around. The HR has to work around either through the initiatives, special initiatives, or through the general ecosystem, which encourage managers and leaders to create more managers and leaders under them, handhold them, and how do they deal with the mistakes? Not reprimanded and creating a negative stigma helps the people to learn and grow. That's my experience in corporate, and that's what I've always worked with. That's what I personally experienced earlier in my career, and I realized that's what makes a great manager.
Very well. No, very well said. And I think it also maybe is changing with the generational change, right? I mean, if you go 20 years back and when people were becoming managers then versus today in the Gen Z or the millennial or whatever gen you call it, now they are getting into that position. Do you think the world has changed or the basics still remain the same?
A hybrid. It's hybrid. The role of a manager hasn't changed. It was job to deliver what the organization or the person is interested to do, right? While carrying the team along. The micromanaging has reduced because now the system processes itself gives you those alerts around. So you don't have to micromanage anyone. Another change which has happened in the last, 30, 25 years, or rather 30 years, the element of trust which manager has to bestow on the team, right? The need is much higher. In my time, in earlier time, if you don't supervise it, people are lethargy. That's not the case today, right? Today, everybody, in fact, manager has to stop people overworking and reduce the burnout. That's the role of a manager. That was not the case, 30 years back. If you can extract more work from employee, you are a great manager. So there's this paradigm shift from the way what is expected. The earlier focus was only the output. Today we are focusing about an overall, comprehensive development and achievement we are talking about here. Young managers, while they have inexperience, some of them are really fantastic managers because they know where the boundaries are. Many of them are still learning, so it's a mixed breed. But that's one for sure. The young generation of employees with whatever category, I won't call millennials because they are already old now. But the this new breed of a workforce is far more confident, far more self-directed. Our job is to give them a tailwind rather than being an obstacle in their growth process. If you do that, everybody thrives.
That's great. I think in very few words, you really captured it extremely well. And just to add on to that, I think there is technology today which is available, and if being used, then the whole micromanagement can go away. People can own their outcomes really well and work collaboratively with the teams to do to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, actually, that's what we do at Joy of Performing as well. So I totally agree with you or what you're saying.
Whole issue of accountability and ownership, my personal view is a very obsolete point of view. Everyone today, at least in this part of the world or globally, okay, want to succeed. The competition is never that high what it is today. Okay, earlier you were competing within your team. Today you are competing globally because organizations have become flatter, organization has become global, and the best person gets the job. So your competition is much higher. You cannot compete unless you have accountability, ownership, and displayed your success. So I mean, so there are very, very few people today who do not feel accountable for their own outcomes. But majority of them are, and I think it is going. The pendulum is going too much from a competition perspective that is building stress in them.
It's interesting that use these two words, right? Burnout and stress. So let me double click on that. So a lot is happening, a lot is going on. World is moving too fast. There is disruption happening, macro, micro, technological, geography. Um, Burnout, is it? And it's not just happening for the employees, but there is a manager burnout as well, because when you're trying to manage people who are stressed, that stress comes to you as well, and you got to handle it well. Otherwise, there is a term called managers burnout. What is your view on that? And it is real. People are depressed, people are very, very stressed about it. So how do they handle this side of it? How do they handle managing?
I think there are two things. I think there are two things. There are two things here. One is from an organizational level, the culture. Okay, uh, the culture has to be in a manner which automatically alerts these kind of a stress and burnout around. If you see somebody consistently working for 14 hours, somebody should immediately point out why is this person working for 14 hours. That's about extended working hours, which is building stress and burnout. Not necessarily the extended working hours is the cause of stress. It could be just sheer volume or a lack of success. It's a so competitive market. Despite your best product, you are not able to do right. What do you do? It will build a stress, and sustain stress will bring the burnout. Okay, there are frequent stress will happen. Like India, Australia, lost the ICC championship, they are not jumping with joy. They will have a stress. And after 3 days, they'll bounce back. Okay, that history is over. But it sustains. That makes it burnout for them. So for competitive world, and that's where again the leader's role comes into play. The culture's role come into play. What kind of a support, preventive and supportive mechanism you are using, which can quickly identify these stress and burnout. Training is a very, very important portion here. My organization does a lot of work in this space. On, as you're talking about managerial leadership, how do you manage yourself stress and burnout, and how do you ensure that you don't pass it down to the team? Okay, that's what your role is. You are a coverage insurance cover for the team in these situations. That's your primary role. So it's very, very essential, and we have been seeing, some of the fatalities happening at a leadership level, at a young level, uh, which tells you the business pressure and how the organization has to review. Is that the way they want to deal with, or they want to pause a little?
No, very well. And I think a lot of managers understand that. They realize that their job is to be the shock absorbers and not just pass on the stress forward. But tell me something. How do you, I mean, do you have any tips which you can give to the audience that when they are down and out, and they will be at some point of time, they are going through that stress, they are demotivated because maybe they are putting in too much of effort, they are not able to get results. How do they deal with that situation? How do they create those shock absorbers, and how do they really work with their teams that even though they are not motivated, they still feel and give that positive vibe to their teams and keep the teams motivated? So what would be your couple of points there?
So I think it's a little dual-edged situation, and very specifically for organization which has a hybrid work environment. Because post-COVID, our relationship with our colleagues are not as deep as it used to be. Because when you are rubbing shoulders, you're laughing, you're feeling around, you don't get that same. Many of the people hasn't seen their colleagues. Okay, so there is not a much of a real connect of the emotional connect with each other while they're everybody's enjoying, they're producing and all. So that's why I'm saying say dual edge. But I think the most important point for everyone is to stop denying yourself that you are okay. It is okay not to be okay. Okay, that's the first realization. I mean, don't fight it out, just a pseudo shield around. No, no, I'm a bravo, like we talk about in masculinity. Same is true, the men who's getting those kind of a pressure around. Sorry, accept there is a challenge there. The first step is go upward, right? Because that's the person who will solve much of your problem from an authority perspective, from job distribution perspective, from support perspective. Keep your superior aligned with you, saying, I have this problem, I am facing this problem, I tend to use these solutions, but doesn't seem to be working. Come and help me. That's one. Second thing is, if you are a good manager or a leader and into this situation, more broadly, I'm saying you have a great relationship with your team. My personal suggestion is be transparent with saying, look, I am facing this problem and I want you to support me for this. Okay. 99% of the team members, 99% of the time, team will stand by you. There will be one bloke here, one bloke there. I mean, that's fine. But my personal experience as well as suggestion will be get into huddle with the team and have a very open heart conversation. Guys, nobody can be perfect in everything, right? That's why you need a team. And the team normally come out with far more brilliant examples than, or solutions rather, than probably any you could think of.
No, absolutely, you have. And I think one element which I really love about this conversation is that be vulnerable. You do not need to showcase which is not. And I think today leaders are accepted and even appreciated when they are real, rather than having a shield, which is unreal. So I think that's great. So now let me ask you a question which I think the audience would appreciate. So there are different sizes of the organization, right? Small, medium, large, entrepreneurial, startups, and whatnot, right? So does the manager role changes from the size of the organization and also from the industry? So if you are in manufacturing versus a financial institution to a tech startup, like how does that role change?
Well, I think there are two, three things which is very important. They are contrastingly different because the environment on which, or the platform on which you operate, is contrastingly different. New organization, doesn't matter you are from a large organization or a small startup or something, you're only operating on idea, right? And that you're trying to bring an idea to life. You don't need processes, you don't need system, you need technology, you need skills. You say, get the job done, don't worry what the process is. Then you become a mid-size. Then you said, okay, no, we need a process, but we need a method in madness also. And then the role of a manager size will also increase. The role of a manager then becomes a little bit of a semi maintenance job. Large organization primarily work on processes, system and processes. If you have the innovation, there is a separate department in innovation because you can't stop and juggle with the running process. Okay, whether it is finance industry, I used to work for Stanchart, used to work for Blue Dart. They are the most process driven industries. If you can't change anything in the process, innovations comes to the side there. In a small organization, you decide whatever you want to decide. You're free. But the element of flexibility, the element of decision making, element of experimenting, which is a measured risk. Take a measured risk on the side. In the stand chart, when I was there, the new global value system came in, it says take measured risk so that you do not become a slave of a process. Be a little creative around. But at a startup level, it's much more flexible and ambiguity. In fact, at a senior level, you at a large organization, there is no ambiguity. For everything, there is a process. The ambiguity is where to find the process. In the young organization, unless you have the ability to deal with ambiguity, you won't survive because there's nothing there. You have to make your own rules. Or sometimes there are contradicting or opposite priorities there, conflicting priorities there. Okay. And speed versus quality, you will have this issue. Customer versus profit, you will have the issues. Reach will have the issues. So how do you deal with these conflicting priorities? Is much higher in a younger organizations. Manufacturing processes, I don't want to peg it down. This is not in a packing order, but manufacturing processes are normally repeatable processes. That's why the speed of change is much slower than specifically in the IT industry, or for that matter, knowledge enabled industry, where change is probably much frequent than what we anticipate. So it's slightly different from the learning curve of manager is far more stiff, and the life of a manager is probably far more challenged than in the manufacturing area.
Very well, very well. Yeah, I mean, I was hearing someone who I think gave a great example, saying that you want to work in a banana plantation or at the rainforest, because when you work in a very mature organization, you know exactly what seed to put in, and what will be the plantation like in few months, right? But when you are going through a rainforest, you don't know anything. Like a spider or a snake can be somewhere, but you can have the most beautiful picturesque that you can see at one day as well. So I think that's very beautifully said. So last section of our podcast, I want to talk about performance management, right? And how even the continuous performance management, right from goal setting to managing your goals and then really reviewing people on those goals, how is it taking place? So as a manager, how important it is to understand performance management, understand goal setting. What is your experience for it? And do you think that can be handled maybe on Excel, or you think there are tools required to handle this? What is your understanding of that subject?
90% of the role of a manager is performance management. But all other things are enabler to performance management. That's the way I look at it. Whether you call it motivation, you call it retention, these are all performance enablers. Happy people perform well. That's the one. Goal, direction, constant monitoring is required. In today's world, if anyone is not excited about technology, okay, I'm not putting it down, but I will put my, three question mark on that mindset, if not the person. Doesn't matter how small you are. Okay. I mean, technology is the real enabler today, and you must hunt for technologies, a platform available to you which support your objective, which you want to do. Right? Even and goals will keep changing. I mean, you can't do annual goal any longer, right? I mean, strategic directions is fine, but by the time it hits the last mile, it's what's the next 3 months? Okay, it's so difficult to track manually. And if you are spending 20% of time in the administrative things of tracking this, that means you have so much of a cushion in your job. You have to be given extra responsibilities is what I believe. So enabling technology or leveraging technology is must today in every aspect of workspace or our business life.
No, I definitely agree. But thank you so much for your time, Sushil. This has been a fantastic conversation. I think the audience will take a lot away from it, and your nuances of managers to leaders, and how managers 90% of the job is actually performance management, and how can they do it better, and the difference between today's generation versus the previous, and how do you manage a small versus a large organization, different industries. I think we've covered quite a bit, which would be extremely useful for the listeners. Any book that you suggest for maybe first time manager or people who've been managing for a long time as well, that can help them to understand the space better?
That's fantastic. I'm a little short of remembering which one should I recommend to the audience. I'm just looking at my library and just looking at which one probably I can pick it up. I think pick up whatever excites you.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
good to great is a good one. I think
Good to
that's
Great is very good one, but is again, 40-year-old book, man. So half of the company does not exist what is listed over there. So that's the way the world exists. I think it's important. I mean, these books which I have the other ones around. This is something which I will again and again and again says young generations seems to have, or young means old also, seems to have lost the art of reading, and we have moved into short snippets of WhatsApp and Chat GPT tell you forget about meetings. So here is the script. I think bring back the reading habits, even if you want to read on Kindle or something, but don't write summaries. Okay, read the full ones. It doesn't matter even if you complete the book or not, because that gets you far more wisdom than the small outputs there. Very important, probably advice or piece of words, I will say experiment. Okay, don't be scared of a failure around. And I remember I was watching one reel there. He said, I think Rahul Dravid had said, in some 608 innings he has played, he has failed about 410 or some time where he hasn't crossed the 50 scores. Now it's a question of how do you look at it, what standard you set it, whether those are failures or those are foundations to the 250s he has made. I think that's the one. I enjoyed Gaurav talking to you. I hope the audience will also probably take some wisdom out of this.
I'm sure. So what is the best way if the audience wants to reach out to you, Sushil? What is the best way for them to reach out to you?
So they can. I'm not very active on social media, but I have a LinkedIn presence as well. I run an organization called Enabling World, which is enablingworld.com. And if they can go there, they can reach out to me from there as well. And some of the clients have been kind enough of putting my names on the internet, so you Sheer search Sushil Tayal name probably will bring you, and my phone number is in the public space.
Thank you. Thank you, Sushil. Thanks for your time. We'll be in touch.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.